Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are peeling back the layers of a story you probably think you know pretty well. We're going to be looking at a really cool literary analysis that uncovers what's actually going on in the first chapter of the book of Daniel.
Okay, let's just dive right in because, the whole story kicks off with a real puzzle. It's a choice that when you first look at it makes absolutely no sense. Why would you risk execution over your dinner menu? Okay, so here's the setup. You've got four young men. They're captured, they're exiled, and suddenly they're handed a golden ticket. They're offered the best education, a place in the king's palace, a fast track to power and influence in the most powerful empire on earth. It's the kind of offer you just can't refuse, right? And yet, they say no. Specifically, they refuse to eat the food from the king's own table. Now, in a royal court like this one, that's a huge deal. It's an act of defiance. This could literally get them killed over a menu choice. So what is really going on here?
And this, you guys, is where the analysis gets so cool. This isn't about diet. It's not about keeping kosher. It turns out this is a story about a whole series of, cosmic contests, a battle for allegiance, for identity, for who's really in charge.
So the first battle we see is this showdown between gods. Right at the beginning of the story, Nebuchadnezzar marches in, takes these sacred vessels from the house of Israel's God, and plunks them down in the treasury of his gods in Babylon. Talk about a power move, right? It's a symbolic, my God beat your God.
And get this, the conflict is even baked right into the language. You see, the text makes this super clever contrast between Daniel's master, which in Hebrew is Adonai, and the court official's master, the king, which is Adoni. Hear how similar those sound? It's a really subtle but absolutely critical question being asked. Who's the real master here?
So you can see this is way bigger than just a few guys. It's a battle of cultures, of entire kingdoms. It's really a conflict over which house, the house of Israel's God or the house of Babylon's gods, is going to come out on top and get to define what's real. Okay, and this slide really gets to the heart of the whole battle. Look, Babylon isn't just handing out cute nicknames. This is a full-on systematic attempt to erase who they are. Their Hebrew names, they all point back to their god. You see the El and the Yah in there. But the new Babylonian names, they completely swap in pagan gods, Aku, Nego, and Bel. This isn't just a name change, it's a hostile spiritual takeover. And the original Hebrew does something so brilliant here. It creates this perfect echo. So the text says, the official set these new names on them. And then what happens? In the very next verse, it says, Daniel set his heart not to be estranged. See the parallel? So his decision about the food, it's not random at all. It is a direct, calculated response to Babylon's attempt to redefine who he is.
Okay, so if it's not about being defiled in the normal, dietary sense, what was this refusal really all about, and why seeds? Why specifically ask for seeds and water?
Well, the key is this very specific Hebrew word that's used, ga'al. Now, this word doesn't really mean defile in the way we might think, like breaking a ritual purity law. It means something more like becoming estranged, being cut off, separated, and needing to be redeemed. So for Daniel, eating the king's food, that wasn't just about dinner. It symbolized total assimilation. It was like being spiritually eaten by Babylon and becoming estranged from his God.
His countermove is brilliant. By choosing seeds, he is making this incredibly powerful multi-layered statement. Think about it. Seeds are the food of new beginnings, right? Which is perfect for this new era they're in. It connects them back to their identity as the seed of the kingdom. It's even a callback to the original diet of humanity back in Genesis. And it's a parallel to the manna God provided in the wilderness, which was actually described as a type of seed. So ultimately, it's this huge declaration of trust in God's provision, not the king's.
Okay, so now let's pull back a bit and see how this whole conflict fits into a much larger kind of hidden structure. Because the author here didn't just write a story. They built this absolutely stunning piece of literary architecture.
The whole chapter is built as what's called a chiasm. Now, you can think of it like a literary pyramid or maybe a story that perfectly folds in on itself to put the most important thing right smack in the middle. So look, part A starts with King Jehoiakim, and then the very last part, A prime, ends with King Cyrus. Part B is about their education starting, and B prime is about that education being finished. Every single piece has a matching counterpart, and it's all designed to lead you inward, right to the very center. And what do we find at that center? The test. Daniel's test is not just some plot device to move the story along. It is the structural and theological heart of the entire chapter. It is the literal pivot point. It's the moment the whole narrative swings from judgment and exile over to blessing and faithfulness. But wait, there's more. The literary architecture doesn't just stop with the shape of the chapter. There's another hidden layer here, and it's all about numbers. Specifically, the author uses the number 5 over and over again. Now, in a lot of ancient literature, 5 represented power. Think of a grasping hand. And believe me, this repetition is no accident. Just look at this. The word king shows up 15 times. That's 3 times 5. The phrases young men, the name Daniel, the word for their food supply, they all appear in multiples of 5. You see what's happening? The author is framing this entire chapter as a contest of power. It's the 5-fold power of the king in Babylon up against the 5-fold power of God's faithful servants. Okay, so all of this amazing literary architecture, all this deep symbolism, what does it all build up to? What's the big takeaway from this incredibly structured story?
Well, what it does is it turns this chapter into a timeless model. It's a blueprint, really, for how to navigate immense cultural pressure. It shows us that it's possible to live faithfully within a foreign culture, to learn from it, to even serve in it, without being completely absorbed by it, without losing who you are at your core.
And that really leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought, doesn't it? Maybe the key for us, for thriving in our own modern-day Babylon, whatever that looks like for you, maybe it lies not just in what these ancient stories say on the surface, but in the deeper wisdom that's embedded in the very way they were built.